Good. Hello, everybody. It's Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and I'm here for another virtual happy hour, and I appreciate you all joining me as well. Tonight, I'll be talking to Charlton-Trujillo, who is a filmmaker and author. And when we say filmmaker too, like if you look at her credits, it's like directing, producing, editing, writing. She does everything on all the films, and that's very exciting. So I'm excited to talk to her about that and about her books, her Fat Angie series, the most recent of which is on my iPad. I'm reading ebooks. It doesn't come out until August, I'm pretty sure. But we're going to talk about that, and we can pre-order it. And I'm going to click the button and invite you onto the screen. Hi!
Sure. It happened. It's magic.
Woo, it worked.
It's so great.
It's always great, like no matter how many times you've done these virtual events or anything, when you actually go live or click the button or invite everybody in the room, there's that moment of like, okay, we've arrived here. We finally made it all come together.
And we cut this one a little close because of me. How close were we? Like 3 minutes till go?
Like 3 minutes, yeah. I wasn't freaking out at all. Totally.
You're right.
Cool as a cucumber over here. I'm just gonna in my mind, I'm like, I'm just gonna start with the wow, this is a super long bio on your website. Just read that out, and that would buy you a good 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Well, that would work then.
That's the plan. So everybody who's watching, if you have any questions or comments for either one of us throughout the entire event, just type it in the comments and we will answer your questions. Or if you don't have any questions, just say hi. Tell us where you're watching from, because that's always fun to see where everybody's watching from. And speaking of that, where are you tuning in from?
Well, I'm in Chico, California.
Okay, and because you are moving to Texas, right?
I am. I'm moving to San Antonio, Texas.
Awesome.
Austin is obviously a wonderful, happening town. I love Austin. But right now, San Antonio is going to be a better fit because after all of these years, I have found my birth mom. I found her right before the pandemic dropped, literally right before.
Wow.
And so we've had this opportunity to connect, on FaceTime and whatnot. And I get a chance to meet my whole family, like my tios and, my aunts, my cousins, like everyone, and my half sister. And I'm so stoked. So I get a chance to be part of a family that I never had before. So I'm excited.
That's so exciting.
I know. And
I'm so happy for you.
Me too. I just can't believe it. And then there's, and then Austin and in San Antonio as well, there's this huge kidlit community, right?
Yes.
And filmmaking is always happening in Texas. So it's like, it's the best of everything. Do you know what I mean? It's
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
Yeah, and that's super exciting, like finding them right before the pandemic. I don't know, do you feel like it kind of gave you this opportunity to connect virtually? Like, would that be, I don't know. In some ways, I think maybe that brings off some of the pressure. Like you're not immediately face to face where you had all this opportunity to kind of talk and it wasn't weird. It wasn't like you're not meeting. It's like you can't. So you're like able to do that.
So I literally met her like November of 2019 for like a day or two. I met her, and then I saw her again in January of 2020 and then boom, right? So, but they were brief, so by meeting virtually, like, it does take a lot of that off. And, also we could have really intense conversations or really funny conversations or, and, I got my first comal, which, for in my culture, being Mexican-American, it's like, like a flat skillet, but, it's for tortillas and whatnot. And my mom sent me my first comal. It's like baby's first comal. And so I would literally I was like, I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, my friends always had them growing up, but like I didn't own one. And then I put a corn tortilla on it and I heated it. I ate it. I was like, what is this magic? It was like my ancestors were in every last bite, not in a creepy way. Like I'm not eating my ancestors, but like the idea that, and I was just like, this is unbelievable. My mom's, what did I tell you? I told you it was good. 'Cause she caught me literally putting the tortillas, the flour tortillas in the toaster, not the oven, but the toaster.
Oh no.
And she was like, no, mija, that is not how we do it. And so, so it's just been a really kind of charming and beautiful thing. And I literally went my whole life not looking like anyone else. Like, I passed for Caucasian, I'm white passing, but I never saw my face, except somebody confused me with some like personality guy named Andy Milanakis once. And that was like about the end of it. And so, but when I met her, it was so weird. Like I'd be like looking over and like she would have my face. And I'm like, it's kind of weird. I'm like, her profile is my profile and her face. And I'm like, I just kept staring and she would kind of look at me like, what? And I'm like, nothing. You just borrowed my face. And she's like, I think it's the other way around. So it's been really great. It's been super great,
That's so exciting to like sort of be in a room finally and you look around, you're like, these are my people. Mm-hmm. Like it's different. It's different. Yes. You feel like you fit in a space. So that's really exciting.
I know.
Yeah. And San Antonio is a fun place. Like I've over the years, for reasons, have probably spent a month in San Antonio. Like I've never lived there, but like a week here, like 10 days there. My husband travels for work. So when our son was younger, we would travel with him a lot. So he ended up doing a bunch of he works at news stations. So news stations in San Antonio. So we were there for like a week and then we were there for like 10 days. And then I've been there, like I've driven through and stopped for like 2 days here, 2 days there. So like probably all together, I've been there for like a month. So I've done long enough to do all the touristy things. Right?
Yeah, of course.
You hit all those things in your first trip. And then when you go back, you're like, okay, now let's get to the real, what is really going on here?
I know. I'm glad you said that. Can I just, and I don't want to interrupt you, but just what you just said, like, New Orleans is like, I love NOLA. Like I lived there briefly, and I will never know the story of that city the way the people who have been born and raised and lived in there, but to be an observer, just to be there and to, it's like, there's story everywhere. I mean, at least that was my experience. It's like everywhere I turned in New Orleans, it was a story. And it is like that town that like, when people say, what is one of the favorite cities you've lived in? It was New Orleans.
Yeah.
Because, and I guess my experience was, pre-pandemic, so I can't speak to what it's been like, in the last year, but and it's not, and it goes back to the idea of what you said, the touristy spots. It's when you get away from the touristy spots, do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's where you find more of that story. It's in the trees. It's in the cobblestone. It's in the potholes. Oh my God. Can we talk about those NOLA potholes?
I wish I could show you the street outside of my house right now. Like a week ago, they just put signs up and then tore up the road. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing that. And that's been a week. And every day, they do work on it every day. At some point, someone comes and does something. Like one day, this gentleman came and he like had a sledgehammer and a bunch of big wooden stakes and he just sledgehammered them all, like 10 of them into the ground.
Okay.
And then left. And that was all, that was all he did today. And I was like, I guess this is going to take a while. But at least they're moving. As long as someone comes out and does something each day, I'll figure we're going in the correct direction. Yeah, so I park on the other block now.
I got you.
Just the way it does. But like everywhere is like that. I find that, there's 2 ways to travel. And I used to be one of the you drive through like road trip kind of travel basically all the time. I'm there for a day, like 3 days maximum. And then, like I was saying, when my husband got this job, I started going with him, and we started sitting in places you never thought. I've been to Fulton, Texas, for a week. I've been to Lufkin, Texas. Texas is so big with many TV stations. These places for like a week at a time, and you're like somewhere you just drove through before. All of a sudden, you learn the food and the personality and San Antonio has so much history too. It's very different than New Orleans history, but again, you get just past the first the things at the top 10 list, and then you start realizing like people have been here for a really long time, all different cultures of people than the rest of America, and like so much, you just start digging deep. And then in the missions, like that's a whole different thing too. Like a few years ago we went, and if you ever find yourself in like the middle of Texas, do the mission, what do they call it? Mission road or mission trail?
Yep. It's been a long time since I've done it. It was when I was younger.
Yeah.
When I was living there.
And some of them are just ruins and other ones are like full on, like the buildings are still standing, and it's just fascinating to follow the trading posts and the missions and everything. So anyway, yes, I'm a big history buff. So
are you? I've seen your IG, and like you always have these beautiful traveling like travel log of places you've gone or been to. And now I know a little bit of the window behind of why. Because I was wondering, it's like, how does she go everywhere? You know?
Well, yeah. That's first of all, I love travel. So, you know, anytime you love anything, as I'm sure you know, being an author and a filmmaker, like that doesn't just fall in your lap. You have to decide at some point, you're like, I'm going to do this. And then you start, you know, saving toward that or making your goals toward that. So it's kind of the same that way. But yeah, I've been lucky enough to have these opportunities through my life to kind of piggyback on other people's jobs that
you're like, I'm just going to scoot along with you.
Just gonna go.
Yeah.
Like, but you want to spend a week in Lufkin? I was like, I don't not want to spend a week in Lufkin. So
why not? So. But it's having that spirit, you know. A lot of that's like in creativity. Everything else is being willing to do something unexpected, to try something different, try something new. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. Right? You might get to Lufkin and go, wow, Lufkin, where I never thought I wanted to be, or you're like, wow, Lufkin, huh?
Yeah, right?
You don't know. You've had the experience, right? And sometimes you'll find the sweetest little moments in the most unexpected places, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Doing that much travel has taught me a couple of things. Find yourself a local coffee shop or a local bookstore. Those are both great for, and I'm not saying that just because I work at bookstores, but they are always good for like, hey, I have a 5-year-old. I'm here for 5 days. What you got? Like, tell me for real where I should go, what I should do. And both local coffee shops.
They will always know. They will always know. You go into an indie bookstore or you go into a coffee shop. It's you know, people say, oh, well, if I need directions to something or where to go or what to do, I'll stop at a gas station. No. You go to the indie bookstore. You go to the coffee shops. That's where the buzz is happening. You know?
Exactly. Not only like with the baristas or the booksellers, but somebody will overhear you and they'll be like, oh, well, have you heard of this? I'm like, no, please tell me. I'm just going to sit down here at your table now and talk to you for 10 minutes about it. So yeah, that's absolutely great. So I want to say hi, take a minute. We've got some comments. Pat Miller, hi.
Hi, Pat.
Dana Middleton, hello. Watching from, okay, it says LA. Are you watching from LA like Los Angeles or LA like Louisiana?
She's LA. She's Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Okay. Linda's from Florida. Hello. Margaret Cobble. Yes. Watching from New Orleans.
Yep.
Hope is in Austin. She is a regular at the bookstore and watches Virtual Happy Hour like almost every week. So
awesome.
Next time you're in Austin, gotta look up Hope. She gives good recommendations for stuff in Austin too. And we have a question. So Linda has a question.
Yeah.
First of all, she wishes you best of luck in meeting your new family.
Oh, thank you.
And then the question is, do you like writing a series or standalone books? So you have both. You have picture books, you have standalone YA, right?
Middle grade? YA and middle grade.
Okay. And then the Fat Angie series, which is YA.
Yeah, and you know, Fat Angie, I didn't even think it was, I didn't think anyone would read the first book, much less that it would be a series. Like, it wasn't planned. That was the part that was so great. It was literally like, I thought it was just going to vanish. And because the first one came out like in 2013, I think. And I went on that tour across America, and it was like, I put everything I owned in storage. I rented a rental car. I packed it with what I could pack it, a bunch of books I could give away to kids. And then I started workshopping with kids all over the country. And so literally, in doing that and taking that book, it wasn't like I was trying to sell the book, which I know that's what I'm supposed to do. It was like I was trying to build on an idea of what does it mean to show up, right? And so like in all of that, I even doing that, it wasn't the idea that I'd end up with a series, you know? And then when I won the ALA award in 2014, you know, the Stonewall Award, I was like, what? And life just changes in that moment because you're given such a gift. And so Pat Zietlow Miller, who is my co-picture book author in crime, we've got 4 books now that are sold that are coming. We have one coming out next year, and she heard that there was a sequel to Fat Angie, and she's like, either you tell your agent or I do. And I'm like, nobody's gonna read it. And she says, I promise you, they're gonna read it. And then it sold, and then the third one now sold, and you know, and now in November, it's like the story comes to a head, and it's like. It's just so much like, you know, with people who plan to write series, they have a vision, right? And I'm literally kind of like, I'm having to figure this out as I go. And at the end of it, I'm like, I feel really great that I did it. Will I do it again? I am working on a duology. and it's a very different genre for me. So maybe, and I'm co-writing that. But with this, I've learned it's sort of like you get to watch your favorite show and see the character arcs and the story arc, and that if you do it right, if you're patient, you can give someone a really powerful, exciting, fun, loud ending, and they've waited for that. They've gone through and they've felt the journey and they felt the love and the loss and the celebration, and they get to the end and they're like, and with Angie, just to go, wow, she can be fat, beautiful, and intelligent and awkward, and she can have two girls want her at the same time, and she has to figure that out and start a band and
Right?
like all of these ands, and I'm like, you know, and then go that that's totally okay, you know. And I think when I first wrote the book, I really thought no one wants to read about a fat girl who's super weird in, you know, Midwestern, you know, Ohio, whose sister's missing in the Iraq War, you know, like. But it ended up being okay because it was funny and really weird. And so, yeah.
Well, it's first of all, those people exist, so they need books to read that where they see themselves.
Right.
So that doesn't sound crazy pants to me at all. I'm like, okay, wait, I know some of these people, so like that's
right. I am one of those people, yeah.
Right? It was like, and then it's like a lot of, you know, so many pieces of who Fat Angie is, somebody can relate to. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like I've been weird and weirdly awkward my whole life. So like, you know, exactly. You can pull from that, you know, and maybe there's other pieces that everybody can find themselves in. I think that shows so much about your writing. And the whole series, the series as a whole, like she's so much going on.
I know.
And I try to think back about like being in high school. I'm like, did I have that much going on all the time? And I think I did, but in that point in my life, like it didn't seem, it was like whatever. Like I could just take on anything.
It's totally normal, right?
You've got all these things happening to you, and then they're like, oh, you know, I was in drama clubs. So like, oh, drama's like, oh, do you want to, you know, you were voted secretary. I'm like, okay, like I'm doing that now. Like, you know, like these things. And like now I'd be like, oh my gosh, do I want to do that? Is that something I can handle? Do I have the like rated pros and cons on a legal sheet?
I know.
And then I'm just like, whatever. So she's like, yeah, got this band going. She's got the girls. She's got the thing. She's got all of this happening. Yep. And she does, I mean, she just takes it in stride. And that's why the series is needed. I didn't know that it wasn't originally supposed to be a series.
It wasn't. It was just like, it's not a fluke per se, but it was just unexpected. Like, and you know, and I will owe a lot to Pat for really pushing me to just, she's like, just take it and show it to him. Just show it to him. And when I did, the response was great. You know, the second book was, I always call it kind of like, it's like a road trip book, but it's not all about a road trip. It's like kind of split. And so it was like my grief book. It was a book that had some hard things, but it was also about empowerment, about stepping into who can you be on the other side of that? You know what I mean? And finding your voice, you know? And so my third book, I'm like, boom, Angie is here. She made it clear, and she's gonna rock the paint. I mean, it's just so fun to write. It was so fun to write.
I love it.
You know, to finally and I felt like I was growing with her. And that was what was exciting. You know, it's like when you can grow with your characters and learn something about being a better human, I'm like, I'm in. You know?
Exactly.
That's exciting. Yeah.
All right, so we have some more questions. Sure. Pat Miller is asking, what's the biggest similarity between making a film and writing a book?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Of course she would ask that question. The biggest similarity between a book and film, I think one of the similarities, one of the stronger ones is the dialogue, right? I mean, films are based in dialogue. I mean, the sensory detail, the description is thinner. It's specific. And I think a lot of the time people do say your books are very cinematic. They feel more film-like. And I do focus on like very sort of specificness without saying things like her hair was long and flowing and auburn and it was like Nestle tea in the summer. Like I don't say things like that. Of course, it's weird. But yeah, no, I think that the dialogue is a big sort of connection that it's crossover, you know, really strong dialogue stuff that feels like it can have layers. Like it's not just hello, how are you, but when you tell a story within a story, you know, like you have those layers. I think there's similarities there between film and, and writing a novel. And, and I think it is about looking at what you want to see, what you want your reader to see, and deciding. It's almost like when I'm writing, I see it like through, like the old lens, like what does the lens see in a camera? And that's what I'm looking at, is what do they see in the room, and why is it there? Why is it important? I feel like you shouldn't have anything wasted. If you're going to put something there, it should be there,
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I think that would be I think for me anyway, that's what it would be. Yeah.
So does knowing how to do one make it easier to do the other, you think? It's kind of.
I came from a playwriting and filmmaking background before writing books. So but now it's sort of chicken and the egg, in some ways, because, right. But I think that doing one thing does inform the other, and writing picture books has actually made me a better novelist, which sounds a little wild, but it has. Yeah, because, it's not something anyone ever thought I would do, was write picture books. And I really felt compelled to write a particular book. And I told Pat Zietlow Miller, I was like, you have to write this with me. Here it is. We're going to do this. And she's like, I don't write with people. And I said, you do now. and we had this great collaboration. And so, but what I've learned through that is, you have to, like that, people always say you have to read a lot, to be a good writer. And you do need to read. You can read, but I always say read good books, what are considered good books, and read things that are maybe not as good, because you can learn from both, right? The same thing with film. You can, the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and then you can go, watch Black Swan, right? And they're not going to.
If you're always just watching Scorsese, you're going to feel bad.
Right, totally. You got to mix it up. You got to mix it up. And so, but I do think there's definitely that vibe of like, you carry over the different arts, not everybody, a way I create would be very different than like M.T. Anderson, right? Or A.S. King, or Jenny Sanchez. We all come at it from a different lens, but for me, I think the, art informs my art. Like I like to get on Instagram and create folders of things. Like when you travel, I put some of your stuff in folders, and it might be the landscape folder, the character folder, or whatever. And then I go back to that because there's so much story in that single image. You know what I mean? And so, I think there's just so much crossover, and there's so much story everywhere. And sometimes I just feel like I just don't have enough time. There's so many good stories, Well,
so. And that's the beauty of, I think artists in general probably is seeing that. You don't just walk by, or let it walk by you. Right. You see the story, or I'm always trying to figure it out. If you see something. The other day I saw, it wasn't a shoe. It was a tie, okay. But I thought it was like a shoestring or whatever, in a tree, because reasons shoes get stuck in trees and electric wires and stuff. So that was my brain went there, but it was like a tie in a tree, and I'm like, what's the deal with this? And I of course know nothing. I know nothing about how the tie got there, why it is, any of this. But my brain isn't just like, oh, that's weird and strange and let's get away from it. It's like, how did that get up there? Did somebody throw it up there? It didn't look like it. It looked like it was up there. Somebody's like been up in this tree with the tie on. I don't know. Took it off, hung it in the tree, or someone else. I don't know. But like that idea, that's where my brain goes, and then it's picking and choosing which pieces of those inspiration you come home and spend your time, typing out, writing down, or deciding you're going to turn into a film or something. You're going to write that down and then decide that's my short. I'm gonna tell the story of that tie.
See, now I'm obsessed with the tie, because I have ADHD, so now I'm like pretty butterfly. And I see your tie now, and I'm thinking, what's the story of that tie?
Right.
Exactly. And, I'm going to write that later and send it to you and say, what do you think about this?
Yes. Probably 10 scenarios have gone through my head. It's not been one of the ones I've written down yet, but yeah, it's like it could be so many things. So many things. I love it. And I just learned how to do that collections thing on Instagram. I didn't know how to create. I could save it, but I didn't know I could make all these different collections. Yeah. And it is not, it's going to be good for my travel, but it's turned into this sort of new Pinterest board thing.
I can see that.
because I have, I have like a list of my top 5 places I'd like to go, or my next 5 places I'd really like to go. And so I have like a Puerto Rico folder. And so like I have these I've started these little collections, but it's not a bad thing. It's just a new place to keep stuff on the internet.
It's true. And I admit it, my folders are full of, but now I have like 10 or 15 folders, and it's like, it's like too many tabs, but I love it. I love it.
It's fun. All right. So let's see. Linda has another question.
Sure.
I saw on your website that you directed some music videos. So how did you get those jobs? Did you know the bands? Were you hired as a director?
Yeah. I did want to, it happens to be that whatever city I lived in, I would have an opportunity. And, being in film, you meet a lot of different kind of artists. And so I met some of the bands, and they wanted music videos, and I was like, well, let's do it. And, and you get together with some of your people and you put it together and you make it happen. And, this wasn't like, Beyonce didn't call me. So, that would have been a whole different thing. But yeah, a lot of the time I'll know artists, or I'll just love a song. And sometimes I'll just reach out to somebody and say, hey, I really love this song. Do you have a video? I'm not always hustling for the cash. I need cash, don't get me wrong. But sometimes you just see you hear something really beautiful or powerful or interesting, and you're like, can I be a part of this? Is there something I can do? Whether it's direct, or can I just come in and help someone who's directing? Because sometimes you just want to be part of something that's really beautiful,
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, part of it was knowing the bands and knowing people who knew the bands or things like that. So I've been really lucky to work on some pretty cool projects. I'm pretty pleased.
And I definitely will second just reaching out.
Yeah.
Virtual happy hour, if it's taught me nothing else, is just ask.
Yeah.
Just ask. It wasn't really particularly in my personality to do that, but now I've been doing virtual happy hour for over a year. And when I started, the first 10 are easy, right? Because again, you just ask the people that are right at the top of your contact list already. And then you're like, I have to put myself out there in a different way. And that has now is the thing that I do, which I wouldn't have said, the beginning of the pandemic. I would not have said that about myself at all.
Oh, really? Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, so this has been fun. So definitely just reach out. That's advice to everyone out there. Whatever it is you're doing, there's no harm in just saying, hey.
No, reaching out is totally cool. Now, when you're in the bathroom, though, and someone follows you into the bathroom at a festival or conference, and I'm writing a book, and they're either in front of your stall or in the stall next to you, and would you like to read it? That's a little different now. That's when, don't reach out as close then. Like, stick with email, social media. That's when that's uncomfortable. I've had that happen a couple times, and I'm just sitting there and like, I really needed to pee, but I can't now. I can't let it go. And it's like, I have pee phobia. I just can't. It has to stay now because there's someone out there asking me if I would read their book. So that's
wait until they leave the restaurant.
Yeah, just let me do that.
Like maybe you're just at this conference and you want to take that opportunity. Cool. Just wait until outside the bathroom.
I'm super approachable. You can come to me after potty time.
The bathroom should just be safe space. This should be an across the board
safe space. Yeah.
Yes.
I can't believe I just took the conversation to the bathroom. Sorry about that.
You know what? It happens. It happens. And that is, so I get some of my best reading time sometimes if I'm having I don't have a lot of extra time in my life. I have those 5 minutes, and I have a little shelf in my bathroom that has like poetry or short stories or something like that. Easy stuff.
You're singing to my heart. You're singing to my heart.
See, people say, "Oh, I don't have enough time to read." Well, look, I take out like 5 books a year at least in the bathroom, so that's not.
Wow.
Short stories and poetry and stuff, but like you just read a poem. Sure. Yeah. See, so don't tell me you don't have time to read.
You're basically saying that there's no reason not to be literate. You can be literate. Right. If you can go to the bathroom, you can be literate.
And I know you go to the bathroom, so don't tell me you don't. That's right. I always keep an ebook on my phone, and it might take me I don't read a ton of ebooks. Usually most all the ebooks I read are pre-pub stuff. And like in the last year I've read more than normal because publishers weren't sending out as many advanced readers copies.
Right.
Yeah. so they would have the ebooks. And I'm like, okay, normally I wouldn't want this, but if it's literally the only way I could get it, I will read it that way. But I always have an ebook on my phone because you never know. Yeah, like I said, I might only get one on my phone done like a year, but you never know when you're going to get a flat tire. You never know when you're going to think something is going to take 5 minutes, but you now have to take a number and it takes 25. I try, sometimes you get stuck into social media. You pull your phone out and now you're tweeting, right? But I try, if I end up with those 15 extra minutes somehow, pull out that.
Look at you using your time wisely.
That's what people say. I don't have time to read, but it's not true.
So you don't get trapped on the scroll.
Well,
is that what you're saying?
Not say I never get.
Are you telling me you're scrollless?
That would not be entirely true to say I never get sucked into the.
Okay, so you're human.
But I'm definitely human. I just try.
Okay.
I try to notice those times when a five minutes looks like it's going to be a 25-minute wait and go, okay, let me take advantage of this. But if it's 5 or 10, I'm not. I'm sucked into the rabbit hole of social media.
Okay. Okay.
All right, let's see. Dave Bartlett asks if there's any chance on a Fat Angie prequel, maybe explaining her sister's story.
Whoa! I've never even considered it.
What? Really?
Hey, you're such a genius. Man, maybe that is going to... I got to get it. But, y'all, I got to start writing books that are about something else. That's why I got these other books going. But maybe there could be. I mean, maybe it could be a novella. I've always thought about that because when you read the third book, there'll be there are a lot of answers. I mean, I really tried to pay off all the storylines. I really did throughout the 3, things that you might have been curious about, things that had dropped. But I have always wondered about what it would have been like. I did write, okay, I'll give this. When I wrote the first Fat Angie, all right, this is a spoiler. So just so you know, for the next minute, this is a spoiler. So if you've not read Fat Angie, just cover your ears or something. Turn the mute button. Angie's sister obviously does not come back from the war. And it just gutted me that she doesn't come back. So I wrote the chapter where she did come back. And then I wrote what would happen after. Because it's sort of like, I was talking about this with my partner. I was like, it's a little bit like Pet Sematary. Some things should stay there. And you don't want it to come back. And she came back, but she didn't come back the same because of her experience and how that fallout happened. So I wrote that version for myself because I wanted a happy ending, but I still couldn't get the happy ending even though she came back, because in reality, coming back for something like that, from being taken hostage and to be tortured and all of that, you don't come back the way you were before. And so I knew that was the ending I was trying to make happen as opposed to the ending that was supposed to happen. And so
that would have changed the whole story.
It would have.
That storyline would have dominated the rest of
it. And it's not her story. Right. And it's not hers, it's Angie's story. Right. And so I had to do the right thing and I had to say goodbye. So anyway, if you can now unmute everyone, and if you can't tell, I'm right, unmute your button.
Excellent. But I think a novella could do that. Could tell enough where fans of the series would love it. But it doesn't have to be a full-on new setup for a story. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Margaret has a question. Besides Angie, who is your favorite character in the Fat Angie trilogy?
Oh,
why? And did that change as the story arc evolved? So who's your favorite other character and why? That's your first.
That's so good. Because every time someone reads the book, I say, what was your favorite character? It makes people crazy. Wow. Okay. In book 2, my favorite character ended up being Zeke. Zeke was a new character. They were a new character in book 2. In book 3, and then book 1 was Jake. Obviously, I love Jake so much. I love KC, but I really love Jake. He's just a good guy. He's that good guy that I knew in high school. He's that guy. He's that guy. I wanted him to be that guy. He was like Lloyd Dobler in Say Anything. He was a good guy.
Yes.
If you haven't seen Say Anything, roll it back to the 90s. And then in book 3, I had such a wonderful cast of people in that book. And there's a character named Lucas who becomes a big character in this third book. Lucas, I think it would be a tie between Lucas and her brother Wang. I mean, Wang has had such a good arc from book 1. That's her adopted brother. From book 1 to book 3. I mean, he's no saint, and but it's interesting to see his arc. So I really love him so much with my whole heart. And I really fell in love with the Lucas character because he was the kind of mentor I wish I'd had as a kid. Somebody to kind of come in and see me for my gifts and growing up in this little town of nowhere in Texas, and to say, these are the things you can do and be. I mean, he's not all Hallmark, don't get me wrong, but just to have that, and I love, and he's human. He's human. He's flawed. He's, the parts of us, it's not that, sometimes we watch a show and we look at something on TV and we're like, that character's just a little too perfect. Like, he still seem to have enough human flaws. And I like characters in all of my books that are rough around the edges, because that's where the texture is in each of us. It's those edges,
And those things bring the reality to the story.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as somebody becomes a little too perfect, or in any way, even if they do one thing a little bit too perfectly, you're like, this becomes I can't relate. Like, maybe I can idolize. Maybe I say, oh, I want to be that, or I wish I could do that as well as this character. But I bet, those rough around the edges bits are what make it relatable.
Well, and think about something like, for all of y'all who can remember Dawson's Creek way back in the day, I really enjoyed that series when it came out, but I could also recognize, I was like, well, these aren't really like the people I grew up with. For me, like the dialogue was so snappy and so intelligent. It doesn't mean my friends weren't snappy and intelligent. It was just, we talked differently, and also it was real. Dawson's Creek was real Caucasian. And so that was like a separation for me. But then I look at it and say, what were the things about that show that worked though? And what are things as a writer I can take away from that? Right. What can I learn? How can I grow? How do story arcs work? And so, I mean, yeah, but there were parts of it that were like, I can't really buy into the plausibility of certain things. And there were parts where I really know what it's like to lose someone. And those things really hit home. That universality that we look for,
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
So I have an interesting Dawson's Creek story.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell me that you were on the set?
I was not. No, I was not. But I hadn't watched a single episode of Dawson's Creek. I was one of those people who's like, oh, Dawson's Creek. Yeah, okay. That's not real. That's silly, fluffy, whatever. Never seen an episode. Then years ago, obviously, when Dawson's Creek was on TV, I got my tattoo artist. Who, he was in between tattoo parlors and making some money by doing tattoos at his house. So I was sitting there getting a tattoo.
Okay.
It was like a 3-hour, tattoo session. And his wife comes home from work, and there's like a Dawson's Creek marathon. So no big deal. I'm just sitting there, whatever. Flip on. She's got his popcorn. She made a glass of wine. We're sitting there watching this Dawson's Creek, right? After Dawson's Creek, after Dawson's Creek, after Dawson's Creek, as Dawson's Creek was on. So I don't know how many Dawson's Creek I've seen, because they were just on and I didn't have a choice. But I had an appreciation for Dawson's Creek after that, because not only do I have this moment where I'm sort of stuck there and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna watch this now,
right.
But then you're right, you do it's purely entertaining, which is great,
right?
But the reason that people like it so much, I think, is because it has these, the friendships are well done, are really well done.
Exactly.
The individual characters, you might be like, if you take them individually, but when you put them together, then that chemistry and that friendship and everything works. And I'm like, okay, I still don't love Dawson's Creek, but I get it now.
Yeah, exactly. Although I'm going to raise you one and date myself. My So-Called Life. Do you remember that one season of My So-Called Life? Oh my God.
There's only one season.
Why? That's what I'm saying. One season. It was so good. Nowadays, it would get picked up by Netflix or Hulu, or somebody might pick it up and run with it. But back in the day, it was like, I watched that and was like, my young mind was like, what is this magic?
Okay, so here's a fun.
Oh, you have one of those.
Well, yeah. So my mom is probably still watching, and we weren't allowed to watch MTV growing up because I don't know, it's the devil's music. They didn't say that, but it's no good.
You're in trouble later.
I know. So like there, you know, My So-Called Life was kind of at the beginning of MTV doing not just music.
Yeah.
And it was getting all this buzz, like it was good. So I snuck MTV and watched My So-Called Life. I know, worth it. Turns out.
Hashtag reveal. Oh my God.
So like, I wasn't really supposed to be watching that, but it was good. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
We couldn't even get cable where I lived. Like we couldn't get cable and we couldn't get MTV. We had 3, 6, and 10. So those were our 3 channels. That's all we could get. And like literally, it was like back where you had to like rent things and bring them home because you couldn't watch them. So yeah, totally different experience. I couldn't even sneak MTV. It just didn't exist. It was like on T-shirts in my friends' houses who lived, you know, near some sort of cable, but like I couldn't get it. So.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you when I learned who Kurt Cobain was?
Yes, do tell.
Okay. So I went to private Protestant school from kindergarten to 6th grade, and don't know who Kurt Cobain is.
Wow.
And so when I started public school in 7th grade, you know, that like Nirvana shirt, and I'm like, I think I've heard of that guy. Who is this guy? Like, so it was not my like best fitting in moment. Starting 7th grade in middle school, asking who Kurt Cobain was. But like, that is how I found out. And like, obviously I had heard Nirvana before, but I didn't know because I didn't have all this context.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know who everybody was. And then all of a sudden I'm there and I'm in middle school and everybody else knows everything, right? You know, these are like everyone else is like so light years ahead of me in any sort of pop culture thing.
Right.
And then that's how I learned who Kurt Cobain was. So.
Okay, I got one for you. Then we'll go back to the books. All right.
Yeah, no, sure, whatever.
Okay, you ready? Undergrad, okay? I'm asked to go on a date with this guy, and I'm like, sure. So we go on this date, okay? We drive to San Antonio from Corpus Christi, so that's about an hour and a half north, okay? He says, we're going to go see this performer. Now, I never heard of this performer, right? So I'm like, cool, okay. But you got to understand is like, most people know me now. It's like hoodies and skate shoes and T-shirts. That's who I am. Back then, I used to like iron my clothes, like press them, okay?
Yeah.
So with the crease, okay, that hard crease, you know, the Texas crease, and the penny loafers with the pennies in them, okay? So we get there. This place is like a square box or something, this big square box of a place, and we go inside. And I realize that I don't look like anybody else there, like the way I'm dressed. I mean, it's sort of like, this is when like goth was kind of gothy, you know? And come to find out that the performer I'm seeing tonight is some gentleman who I thought his name was Marilyn Mason, but it was Marilyn Manson. And I didn't really understand what was going to happen until he came on stage. And it was like a cross between like some weird, like, is this the Wall with Pink Floyd? Or is this like some sort of indoctrination to hell? And like, he was like, they were throwing salutes at him and all this kind of stuff. And it was like insane. And as soon as he came out, I was in the back and they pushed everybody to the front. So I got pushed all the way to the gate, right? So I literally couldn't breathe. Like I could not breathe. And all I remember, someone says, watch out. And I looked up, boom, someone was surfing, landed on my face. Blood gushes out everywhere. It's gruesome. My white pressed shirt is bloody. My face is bloody. I can't breathe. I'm up against the gate. The dude I'm with, who's my date, has disappeared. And literally, so there's this big hulking like gentleman on the other side of the gate. He sees me and I'm like, help me. He's like screaming, you know. But you know, he can't hear me. He just hears, help me, because it's so loud. And he literally, this dude he just comes over and he takes his arms, he hooks them under me, lifts me up magically over this gate. Now granted, I've never been skinny, but you know, I was a little lighter than now, but this guy, I don't know how he did it. Like one lift just pulls me out. And then I only see him, he's like mouthing, are you okay? But he's like, are you okay? And there's just like blood everywhere. I was like, I'm fine. And I walk off and I'm standing at the back finally. And then literally I'm standing there and I've got blood on me and I look crazy town. Now I do look like everyone else. And some girl comes running up and her boyfriend's holding her arm and she's like, ugh! And she throws up, splat all over my shoe. I did not make a word of that craziness up. It happened and I can write about it. It was that nuts. All over my shoe with a penny. My penny's covered in vomit. Like, it was awful. And the guy finds me later. The boyfriend guy. It wasn't my boyfriend. It was my date. Finds me later. He's like, "Hey, I got you a T-shirt." He was holding this T-shirt and he's looking at my face and my shirt. He's like, "What happened to you?" Worst date almost ever. There you go.
But how do you feel about Marilyn Manson? Like, okay, just his music. Let's just from that moment, were you like, oh, I now have this memory of this special moment, like thing, and like that's a positive sort of, or you're like, no, never, no.
No, it's fine. Like, I love music, all kinds of music. Everybody knows I'm totally like music, like fiend. So I'm fine with his music. I was younger. I was listening to 9 Inch Nails too, and that was like before, they did like the score for The Social Network. Yeah. And so no, I mean, it's fine. Like, I don't agree with some of his politics and the craziness that he is, but yeah, sure. Musically, it would have been a lot funner, but it was a little bit like eccentric.
Yeah. And sometimes those moments in life, because you don't know what you're getting into. So sometimes those could be like, all right, well, I have this positive memory associated, or sometimes you just know I've never had that experience.
No, it didn't influence the music. It just makes for a really great and unbelievable story, except like it happened and I can't believe it.
It's good. Dave Bartlett asks, are the taste buds going to make a post-COVID comeback?
Oh, the taste buds.
Okay, you have to explain this to me. I don't know.
It was awful. He should be shamed for mentioning it. It was awful. The taste buds it's my partner and I a couple of years ago. We'd taste food that we didn't know if it would be good or bad, and then you could see our reactions and decide if you wanted to try it. But basically, we tried it so you didn't have to, in case it was awful. So we used to do that. We didn't cut it like John Green style, which would have been fast, 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 fast. It was more like taking our time, and then like, it's definitely not an MTV cut. So maybe we'll come back if someone sends us some ideas for some interesting food to try. We might come back, but on a revival, but it'll be cut a lot faster, like a lot faster.
Okay, where are these?
Well, I think they're on YouTube still. I haven't seen them.
I won't put a link to them.
Good luck finding it. You probably will, though. And you can link it. It's fine. They're terrible. I don't care.
A lot of times I try to link to things as we mentioned them, but I will if you really want to, you could probably find it on YouTube.
You can find it magically. Dave, if he can find a link, he can send it up on the comments or whatever.
There you go. What songs were you listening to while writing Homecoming? Dave asks.
Oh my God. It's like, what was I not listening to? Homecoming. I'm like reaching for my playlist because
I was about to say you should make a playlist. That's a thing now.
I do that for every book. I'll release this one too. For every book I write, there is a playlist. In fact, the original Fat Angie book, the reason why it exists is I was sitting in a snowy diner in Madison, Wisconsin, and I heard Lenny Kravitz's "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" And I got the whole first chapter in my head, literally from that song. So, had it not been for that moment, I don't think there would be a book. So, I had, so embarrassed. I did have Teenage Dream. Katy Perry is in here. Walk the Moon, Shut Up and Dance, some Bruno Mars. Okay, hashtag Angie is super retro. Can't Fight This Feeling by REO Speedwagon. Yes, Feel the Pain. Echo and the Bunnymen, or some of it. This isn't my formal list, but those are some of them. I'll put up the list later though, for sure. I'll put it up on Spotify and drop it. But I mean, because when I'm writing, I tend to write to music, and some authors really struggle. Like if there's any language in the background, it's too much. Mm-hmm. But what happens is my brain just sort of, attenuates and just kind of like it floods out the language in some way, and it just hears the music. And then I'm writing to that beat or to that sound. And because, when you're writing a novel, you're in it for the long haul. Usually it's not, you're not done in 10 days. And the music puts you back into the energy of particular characters or emotions. It's like acting. You find those tools. And I come from that background. You find tools to help you get back into the feeling. And so, every book I've written, since Prize Fighter and Mikasa, which was my first book, and it was a middle grade. And I was listening to this. I don't know if most people won't know the film. It's Desperado by Robert Rodriguez. And and so there was some music in there, and there was this instrumental piece. And every time I played it, it was when like this illegal prize fighter from Mexico would walk into the room. I'd always listen to that to get that energy of his size and his shape and his brokenness. And so music is so much a part of my creative experience. I cannot imagine writing without it being part of that. And in the second Fat Angie, we literally, the chapters are titled after songs. So yeah, totally.
Desperado is so good, and if you haven't seen it, you guys, you need to go see it.
Oh yeah, Salma Hayek and Antonio Banderas, right?
Yes, and his book Rebel Without a Crew.
I still have it.
It's like, if you are a filmmaker, you want to be a filmmaker, you know someone who wants to be a filmmaker, that is like, you've got to read that book.
It's quintessential. Like, it's just quintessential, down and dirty. And now there's no reason you can make a film on your phone. Tangerine was beautiful. Yes. I mean, Tangerine was a beautiful film. And yeah, they added a external lens and they used a mic thing, but still, it was shot on a phone. Like, there's no reason. You can do it now. You can do whatever you want,
Yeah, and that makes, like, if you take the guerrilla style filmmaking, DIY filmmaking stuff, and then just the tools. I mean, laying on my desk, I have an iPad and a phone, and a computer. I've got this ring light. I mean, between the things laying on my desk, I could probably make a film that,
of course you could,
and using those techniques.
I mean,
my friends.
I mean, seriously, like, that's the thing, is the ease is there, whether you're a Mac person or a Windows person, the ease is there. There's something to edit on, to clean up your sound with. It's generally fairly affordable, but, make some short films, make some music videos with your friends, like, do something, be creative. It's so exciting because, I always felt like growing up where I did, there was no video clubs. There was no, there was no access. We barely had books. I'm not even joking. Like, it was just a really impoverished community. There was nothing to really, fill that gap. And now you can be in some of the hardest hit communities or some, really struggling. But if you have access to a phone and the internet, you have access to tell your story, whether it's on Snapchat or TikTok or YouTube or Facebook or, IG, whatever, like. And that's what I love about it now is, I mean, I know there are definitely drawbacks to every medium, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like now young people have such an opportunity to be heard. Do you know what I mean? And they are being heard, Yeah. It's like, it's just beautiful.
Absolutely. Like, so Snapchat and TikTok, for example, one of the things that I love to do going through those is some of them are so good.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells whole stories in a 60-second little TikTok. That's just amazing to me. And I'm not, it just takes time. It takes time, and your want to do it. The tools are in the app for the most part.
It's all there.
It's fascinating to be able to just, create something that can tell a story like that with your phone, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, so I want to mention again that, and I'm going to put the link, that Fat Angie Homecoming is available for pre-order. So I'm putting the link down here again, where you can pre-order the book. It doesn't come out till November.
Right.
Worth it, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is also serious. Like, everyone who's here has probably read the first one or two.
Yeah.
So that's good, but is it as a recommendation for friends? This is a series that I might hold and be like, here, take them all three. Like, you can read them back to back. Like, they fit together so well that this is one of those series where you're like, I have to wait another year. Like, when you find out there's a second one, you're like, okay, I have to wait another 6 months. And then there's like a third one, you have to wait. Like, that's, you want that next one. So you saying that, it wasn't supposed to be serious, but sort of naturally kind of became that and was easy to write once you got the go, to do it.
I mean, it was some work, no joke. Like, because I think people who plan, they have a better grasp of where they're going with it. You know what I mean? And literally I had to go back and look at that first book and think, is there something really here that is going to make the second book really work? And is there something in the first and the second book that can really be, because you don't want to write the same book 3 times, right? You don't want to, it's like Fat Angie 3. It's like Jaws 3 in 3D. You don't want to write that book. You don't want to write Godfather 3. I know this is an argument among many, but it's not for me. So, but like, there's just a point where you have to say, like, you don't want to make Free Willy 3. You don't want to, like, all those 3s, you get really nervous. And I can tell you, it's like, you know, I've made, you know, every author can look at a book and see what they could have done differently, right? And I can too. There's things I would change in some of my books. I'm really excited about this third book. It's probably the most quote unquote commercial-ish feeling book of the 3, I guess. But what's really, it's like, man, it was so much fun to write, you know, and to feel the strength and it was so fun, and it's so loud, and I wrote original songs, and that was like, oh my God. And, you know, but it was just really good in that sense of, like, sometimes you write something, you just feel really good. You feel like, wow, I want young people to read this. I want people there's sometimes you write something, you go, God, does this really where's this going? But this was that moment where it's like, wow, this is the best version of this book I could write, you know? And I'm stoked. I'm so stoked.
Yeah, this is the like empowering closure ending that you were hoping for the whole time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And total side note, I pulled it up on my phone because I don't know if you know about this one. Let me see if it'll come up.
Living Beyond Border. Oh, I haven't read that, but yes.
So it's coming out in August, and it's an anthology. It's the thing that's special. Let's say I'll do that. It's the first Mexican-American anthology for young people. And so it's a first, and I'm so excited. I'm in it. And there are so many brilliant authors in this, no joke. And I don't have to say that. Like, I could just be like, I'm in it. But no, like, they're actually really great writers. And edited by a librarian / educator / now editor out of Texas. And so that's coming out in August. And so anyone who is reading, working with young people, wants to just devour delicious, empowering stories, you know, different stories. And if you like Frida Kahlo, # that is what my story has. So I'm just saying, if you're feeling the need some Frida Kahlo action, I got a little Frida in mind. So, but yeah, that's also happening in August for sure.
Awesome. I put the link in the comments to Living Beyond Borders, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because not only is it nice to know other things that you're in, but that is an amazing book to handle. I mean, what you're saying, like, people ask for specific things, and sometimes you're like, I don't know. Give me a minute. You know, let me look that up. You just can't remember everything, and that is an amazing book.
Well, we were just talking about that before we started, right? Because we were talking about the other book that I told you I just got in the mail that I'm excited to read, which is The Nature of Witches. The
Nature of Witches.
Yeah, and I'm so excited. And y'all need to know this. This is not the typical book for me, but # not typical anymore. It's about weather. I love weather. I'm the biggest weather nerd you've ever met.
That's awesome. I wanted to be an meteorologist for a while.
Me too.
Yeah, that's like, it was on my short list in high school, you know?
So I'm actually excited to read that. It just came out, I think, a week or 2 ago. Really fascinating premise. Writing seems kind of really has a nice click to it. And so I've started, but I'm not in. So.
Okay, so I'll show you what I just finished and what I'm about to start too. So I just finished Hollow Kingdom.
Ooh.
I don't know if you've read this or not. It's post-apocalyptic.
Ooh.
Humans have turned into something like a zombie, but it's told from a pet crow's point of view.
Okay, I'm in. I'm writing it down right now.
It's hilarious.
A pet
the human that he was raised by, let's say he's kind of white trashy.
Okay.
And he calls other humans mofos. So he's like, what are those mofos doing over there?
Oh,
so the crow, but you don't really, like, you get that all from the crow's point of view, because the crow calls other humans, he calls humans mofos.
All right.
Where those mofos shuffling off to? Oh, that mofo's eating that other mofo's head. what is happening outside? Like he's describing what's happening. It's hilarious. So I just finished that one. And then Feral Creatures, which is the second one, comes out in July. So if you like, Feral Creatures comes out in July.
Okay.
And Hollow Kingdom came out, I guess, last year, 2019. Okay. You know, 2018 is, or 2020 is like a blur of time. So it came out a year or maybe two. Ago, but yeah.
Somewhere in that.
But I just started Feral Creatures, the second one, and it seems to be just as hilarious and fun.
Really?
As the first one. So
okay.
I definitely recommend those. And we made it. We made it to 6 o'clock.
We made it to 6 o'clock, everyone.
Yay!
Yay! We did it! That's awesome.
Thank you to everyone who commented and watched throughout the evening. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Eve, for joining me for Virtual Happy Hour.
It was awesome.
Yes, it was tons of fun sharing stories with you. So, yeah, everybody use the links to order all the books we talked about. And especially the Fat Angie series, and pre-order Homecoming because it will be out in November. And yeah, have a good night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.